the idea of getting sober, you're going to experience things that you've never done before. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of fear associated with that. And so how do you move forward and try things that are new and maybe you don't have experience with? How does it feel and how do we get through something like that? So that's, in a nutshell, the idea behind some of this experiential work.
Hello, I am B. Reeves with Voyage Recovery in Raleigh, North Carolina. Welcome to our weekly podcast, Finding New Waters. Our goal in creating Finding New Waters is to provide a resource for families to help navigate the complexities of supporting a loved one struggling with substance use or mental health. When we find ourselves in crisis due to one of these issues, most people have no idea where to turn. We hope to shed some light onto what is often the darkest hour for many families. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Finding New Waters podcast. My name is Justin McClendon. I'm the CEO at Voyage Recovery. And today I'm joined by Brad Sylvain, who is the, I don't want to butcher this, Director of Business Development. Is that correct?
That is it.
That's it. Director of Business Development with Voyage Recovery in Florida. I think you guys, Voyage is in Jupiter. Is that correct? Jupiter, Florida?
Yeah, our clinical building is right by the Jupiter Inlet in Jupiter, and then our housing is both in Martin County. We have one house in Tequesta and one house in the city limits of Jupiter.
Very cool. Well, Brad, I don't want to do a disservice, so maybe you could start by just telling us a little bit about, what is it to be a Director of Business Development and, what brought you into the field and that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Justin. Really appreciate the work.
Our pleasure.
We got a long history of working together and having these relationships. So I just transitioned to my role as business development at Voyage Recovery. I've been in the treatment industry for 15 years. I've held a number of different positions. I started off as a tech. I can get into a little bit of that story. But this is kind of my first role as a business development guy and kind of helping out with the front end of the business. And so my primary responsibility is to make connections with clinical professionals, treatment professionals throughout the country, and look to kind of educate them on the work that we're doing at Voyage, how we can help a patient that maybe they're serving, who is our ideal patient, what is the work that we do here, what makes us unique and different. So that's the role I've been serving in over the last few months, 4 months or so. Prior to that, I served in a number of roles. I was at the same organization for 11 and a half years, which is the Hanley Center. I was a multitude of roles over there. Started off doing discharge planning 12 years ago for that program, worked my way into the admissions department, got to spend some time learning admissions. Probably the bulk of my treatment experience was on the front end, dealing with families in crisis and patients that were kind of struggling. Did that work for 6 years and then had the opportunity to serve as the executive director of the Hanley Center, overseeing all of the Florida operations for 3 years, Headwaters included, which is a luxury, kind of higher end executive program, and their outpatient centers in Florida for 3 years. After that, right around COVID, we went through a lot of challenges like most treatment centers did, and I moved into a role as vice president of operations, overseeing the entire treatment product that Origins was offering. Texas Properties, a detox in Dallas. So I left that role just a couple months ago and came to work with some guys that I knew for a really long time here. A much smaller program. Hanley and the Origins property had over 200 beds for the bulk of the time that I was with them. I came to work at like kind of a mom and pop 20-bed young adult men treatment center here in Jupiter with a really good friend of mine, Kevin Bandy, who, funny enough, he's the founder here, and he was a tech in the treatment center I attended in 1999. So I've known Kevin.
That?
I was in treatment in 1999. And so when I kind of left Hanley, I didn't really know what direction I was going to go in. And he reached out on day one and said, "Hey, come work for me. I'd love for you to work with us." And I met the team of people here and I immediately fell in love with the work they were doing here. But just to kind of back up a little bit, I'm a guy in long-term recovery. I've been sober since April 1st of 2000. So I just celebrated 24 years of sobriety.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. I originally, when I got sober, I got into the real estate market. I got sober in South Florida. Early 2000, real estate was like electric down here, and everybody in the local recovery community was, in the real estate world, whether it was mortgages or whatnot. And so I did that for my first 6 or 7 years of my recovery. And then in 2007, the market kind of collapsed and I didn't know what to do. I hadn't gone back to school yet. I had started some college. And I remember I went to lunch with my dad and he said, just go get a job, Brad. And I went and got a job as a second shift tech, working 4 to midnight, so I could finish my bachelor's degree, working 4 to midnight in a treatment center. And the rest is history. That was in 2008. So since 2008, I've worked in the treatment field.
That's great. Where were you a tech at?
I was a tech at an adolescent drug treatment center that primarily serves kids that are sent there through the court system. It's called
Okay.
Drug Abuse Treatment Association. That was my first role. Then I left there and started an IOP with a small group of people that primarily focused on low income Medicare, Medicaid population. We did in-home community service. We got people enrolled in SNAP benefits, all sorts of social programs to kind of help them alleviate their challenges. And all those kids, and I worked there for probably 4 years, 3.5 years, all those kids came to us as a direct referral from the juvenile justice system. So every kid in that program had been to a leveled jail. So they had been incarcerated as an adolescent. And so when they would get out, we were doing the reentry for them, getting them back enrolled in school, getting them kind of connected to what kind of benefits they had, doing anger management, substance abuse counseling, reintegration counseling with them. And I was the program director of that facility before I joined the Hanley Center.
Very cool. That's awesome, man. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, so Brad and I go way back, or back a ways anyway. I think, 10 years or something like that. So when I first started at the Hanley Center, I think you were director of admissions, I'm pretty sure at that point.
Yep.
And yeah, so I mean, I couldn't speak highly enough of Brad. Amazing professional, amazing human being. I'm grateful to have worked with you and to know you. And Voyage, great people over there. I mean, I know Kevin Bandy, I know Ryan Potter. I mean, some great professionals. So I can imagine you were just an absolute, really good addition to that team over there.
Yeah, I think that was really what sparked my interest in coming to work here. I looked at a lot of different opportunities to go out there and, try on different roles. A lot of them were in private equity. A lot of the treatment industry is moving in this direction of private equity, where,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like it's all about dollars and cents. And I had most of my opportunities were to go work at a place that was kind of private equity funded. And when I got
Mm-hmm.
to meet the team here and realized this was like a real, owner operated program between Kevin and Alex, that they were involved in the day-to-day decision making and that they had no interest in going the private equity route, it really was appealing to me to be a part of something where it felt like there was like a significant soul here.
Sure.
And that's kind of the feeling that I got is when I came on board here, that there was like a soul to this operation. Everybody here, all the staff, was so dialed in and helping young adult men. That was from top down, from Kevin all the way down to, the techs. They were all kind of dialed in, knew what was going on, what the patient population needed here. We're not trying to be everything for everybody. We kind of know what we do really, really well. And so I think that's kind of helps us, is that we have a general idea of who's the guy we want to treat, how we want to treat them, and we don't really compromise on that, right? That's from length of stay, level of care, right? How our clinical approach, we're really dialed in to helping a particular young adult man between the age of
Mm-hmm.
18, maybe 35 at the most. So we're not trying to do women's treatment at the moment. It's not even on the horizon. We're not trying to do
Mm-hmm.
older adult care. We're really dialed in young adult men. What is it that we can do to get their attention? How we can engage them and get them kind of set on a track to, build a meaningful, significant life.
That's amazing. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So Voyage, young adult men, 18 to 35-ish, South Florida. I mean, South Florida is beautiful and warm, so you can't really beat that, right? But talk to me a little bit more about like program, what does that look like for somebody, potential client that's going to come down to Voyage and spend some time with you guys?
Yeah, I think the whole idea around starting Voyage was, what is the best clinical product we can put together to attract people in this particular demographic? What can we do to get their attention, to keep them motivated and keep them engaged? And so historically, there's two kind of tracks for young adult men. There's like wilderness treatment programming where you
Mm-hmm.
send them out, they go camping, they do a lot of outdoor experiential work, and there's a lot of efficacy to that. Primarily because young guys sitting in a classroom all day style treatment approach,
Right.
uh, ADHD, hyperactivity, loss of focus, maybe you kind of lose their attention. And so that's the idea behind that approach. And then there's this traditional clinical treatment approach, which is, the four walls treatment. We're on a whiteboard. We're talking about, issues and trauma. And so we could see the efficacy to both models, and they could
Mm-hmm.
see how and why people would choose both. And I think their goal from the beginning was how to blend the two. How do we
That's great.
create a treatment program that does some of this experiential outdoor wilderness-based, adventure-based therapy? Because guys are really responsive to that. And for a guy who might not open up in like a clinical group environment, they might open up on like a fishing trip. They might open up deep sea diving. They might open up, on a hike in the woods or canoeing. That might be the way in which to break through their the barriers in which they're putting up. And so that was kind of Voyage's idea, was to kind of blend those two models. And so we do two structured morning experiential exercises every week. That's Wednesdays
Okay.
and Fridays, where we take our young guys out and do some kind of outdoor experiential type work. And there's a multitude of things we do. Like behind us, there's a picture of a guy, rock walking with a weight in his hand. Like that's an exercise we do. We do a lot of breath work activities in the water. We're located so close to the ocean in South Florida. I mean, one of our properties is on the intercoastal. We have a lot of access to marinas and boats because of our founder, and that's a business in which he is involved in. So we have an opportunity to, gain access to the ocean. And a lot of our guys don't come from South Florida. They come from all over the country, the Northeast, Chicago, uh, North Carolina,
Mm-hmm.
Texas. And so maybe they've never had exposure to those things. And we want to kind of give them exposure to things they've never had access to. So we'll go like diving on local reefs, we'll go spearfishing. And so our exercises, we start off, I'll give you one example. We start off with an exercising around free diving. And so we do a lot of breath work associated with free diving. And so we'll start off taking a guy into a pool and teaching that guy how to uh, box breathe, circle breathing. We'll teach him different techniques on how to control and regulate his heartbeat, how to control and regulate his oxygen intake, and so that he can go from like a 40-second breath hold to a 3.5 minute breath hold, right? That's like
Wow.
goal. And so we have a strategy in place, and we could teach anybody just through these tactics on how to kind
Mm-hmm.
of maintain their breath, how to lower their heart rate, and so that's a skill that you could take outside of the pool, and you could
Yeah,
take
absolutely.
you could take it into your stressful situation at work, or a situation with a family where you can learn self-regulated tactics like DBT type skills.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do that with them. We start in a pool, then we do shallow water dives, and then we do free water dives, and then we'll go spearfishing with them, right? And so then they get to like try to spearfish, and they got to deal with the stress and the excitement of, trying to catch a fish while they're holding their breath. So it's even a higher level of difficulty, because you get that excitement as that, fish kind of rolls right in front of you. How do you regulate your breath work, and how do you regulate your heart rate in those moments? And so we take them on an activity like that, and then we follow that up with a DBT skills group, process group, directly following that. And so what I tell people, regardless of the exercise that we do, whether we go surfing, hiking, what you'll find is a various level of experience in that particular topic. We've had, semi-pro surfers here and guys who've never surfed before, right? And so we can
Okay.
take them all out into the water. We can give them an experience trying to surf. And then we could talk to them. We could process through the guy who's a semi-pro surfer, who's had a lot of experience on the water. How is it out there on the water, not intoxicated? How was it out on the water as the most experienced guy? Did you reach out to the guy who had no experience and give him tools and talk to him about tactics and strategy on how to get out, how to get through the waves, how to stand up on the board? Did you use your skill to help another guy? And vice versa, the guy who'd never been surfing before. What was that experience like to do something you've never done before? Because as you and I know, as guys who are, had, treatment experience and recovery experience, the idea of getting sober, you're going to experience things that you've never done before. And so
Yeah.
there's a lot of fear associated with that. And so how do you kind of move forward and try things that are new and maybe you don't have experience with? How does it feel? And how do we get through something like that? So that's in a nutshell, the idea behind some of this experiential work. And so we do those things structured Wednesdays and Fridays. And then the rest of the week, we do kind of process group. We do 2 groups a day. They're in their clinical environment, 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. And so we mold those experiential exercises with, sound clinical experiences. And we kind of see where guys get, where we can break through to a guy. Some guy gets in group and we're talking about trauma and we're talking about emotions and he opens up and he kind of feels that he's building relationship with us. And other guys, they catch a sailfish with their peers. We had this young kid here recently. He was real quiet, real introverted. Well, he went on a fishing charter, caught a huge sailfish in front of all of his peers. And
Oh, wow.
he was on fire, right? He came back to the building that day, smile ear to ear, talking to everybody. This is a kid the week before who wouldn't talk to anybody. And so we were break through his, outer kind of shell out on experiential exercise. And so we want to kind of come at this thing from a multitude of different clinical approaches, not simply just have, one way to try to break through those barriers that a lot of our guys come in with us. And so that's the
very cool.
The fee behind Voyage. We do a lot of group work. We have we right now have 4 primary therapists, a clinical director, a part-time family therapist, and then both Kevin and Ryan, who are therapists. So we have 8 therapists, and our maximum occupancy is 20 guys at the moment. We're currently in the process of expanding. We've been known as a 15-bed program, primary treatment program. Part of bringing me on is we're expanding that from 15 to 24. We're doing it kind of slowly. We're incrementally increasing census. And so right now, max capacity is 20. Soon we'll go to 21 and 22 and kind of feel the struggles. You ran these
absolutely.
programs before, and if you go from 15 to 24, it doesn't sound like much, but it's a 66% increase in occupancy. And so there's a bunch of problems that could happen. And so we want to kind of discover those problems before we open the floodgates and are at 24 guys and are overwhelmed. And so we actually run 2 simultaneous groups. So maximum, if we're at 20 right now, maximum you have is like 10 guys in each group.
Okay.
So 2 groups going on at one time with smaller kind of caseload type presentations. And sometimes we do some bigger, all the guys in one group. So that's our program. We're a 90-day treatment center. I think the first month of treatment, we kind of identify what issues there are to work on. We watch a guy get kind of settled. We learn him. We learn what he's interested in. Second month of treatment, we do a lot of family work. We do a 4-day clinically intensive family workshop with all of our patients. Our founder, Kevin Bandy, runs that 4-day family intensive. So those families are there with their loved ones doing actual therapy, and the family members come in as patients to this experience.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so there's work for them to do. There's work for their patient to do. And so that's like kind of month 2. And then month 3, we're kind of talking about what's next for them. Right? Is sober living next? Is going back to college next? Is moving back home with a loved one next? Like, how do we set this young man up for a life of long-term sustainable success? And so that's kind of the last month. And when I said earlier, we really don't negotiate with that. We believe in the model in which we've outlined. And so some people call and they say, well, I'm only willing to do 30 days. There's a lot of great 30-day treatment centers out there. We refer you to one of those great 30-day models. We kind of believe in the strategy that we're doing.
Well, and I'm right there with you, especially when it comes to a young adult. and again, I would not want to put everybody in a box, right? And say, hey, if you're in between this age demographic, like you should just absolutely do long-term treatment. But, I would assume your experience speaks to the same, is that, you're, 18-year-old, you're young 20, mid 20-year-old, that has been living in, active addiction for a while and spending time with this specific friend group, and like just all of the things and the habits and the way that they live become so ingrained. And also, I just think such a impressionable point of their development. It's really tough for that person to just go away to 30 days of treatment and then just go back home and do kind of an IOP program and be successful. And I think that not that alone, but that's one of the reasons that we see a lot of, just continued treatment episodes and, in and out of treatment, just continuing to struggle to stay sober. And I completely agree with you. I think being able to be somewhere for a long enough period of time to see some of, how some of your habits and your behaviors and how you engage socially can change and be more positive, and be able to sustain that for a long enough time is really important for them to be able to transition back to a home environment or, to a social setting, and to have those skills kind of apply to that environment.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like to get sober as like an older adult or, even,
Sure.
but I know my personal experience. And so my
Hmm.
personal experience was getting sober as a young man, um, late teens, early 20s, kind of learning and experiencing life as I was physically growing up, right? So a lot of
Sure.
people come to the recovery process and they're kind of adolescent in their presentation because they've been using for so long, but maybe they're an adult. They're in an adult body.
Right.
I was a legitimate adolescent with
Right.
very low functioning social skills. And so I knew the challenges that presented to me. I knew what it was
Hmm.
like. I know the experience of going back to college and as a sober man and early recovery and what that looks and feels like. I know the experience of dating women early in my recovery process and being a young guy in the dating circle and what that looks and feels like as a young 20-year-old, kind of dating women and feeling that out and watching them drink at a restaurant and what that experience is like. So I can kind of relate to the at least life experiences that a lot of these young men go through. I think that was one
Yeah.
of the main reasons why I wanted to come here, because I felt of all the people out there, this was the group of folks I could be the most impactful with.
There you go. I love that, man. I love that. Yeah. So, I mean, and again, I think in our industry, you see that a lot of the treatment centers that are geared towards young adults, like, I feel like that's become kind of the gold standard, right? I mean, like 90 days, and then it's not over then, right? There's a transition that's going to happen. You're going to need to do some, continued outpatient work. Let's make sure your environment is structured. You're engaging in healthy, healthy habits, healthy activities. But that 90-day period just seems so crucial for that young adult, right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think I'm a proponent of longer term care. I'm a proponent of being engaged in some level of clinical services for your first year of recovery, whether that's, you know, residential treatment all the way through outpatient. I just think there's some benefit in having um, that engagement there your entire like the at least for 1 year. So does
Yeah.
that mean you're behind, treatment center locked doors for a year? No, but I think
Right.
what we know is, like, if you look at like pilots, or if you look at some of these other groups that have a real strict
Hmm.
oversight, they stay sober and do really well at a much higher propensity than someone with limited oversight, limited restrictions. And so I think that having some level of support throughout your earlier part of your recovery will ensure a longer term uh, outcome. And so I think it works. I don't.
Hmm.
So I went personally to treatment for a long time. I was in treatment for 13 months. And so
Okay.
I think about 90 days and I think it's like kind of a flash in the pan. Now I know that's me kind of taking personal experience and like projecting that on someone else. So I feel the pushback from guys like 90 days, that's so long, right? Right
Hmm.
now, going into the summer, we're at the beginning of summer. So the guys who are coming here are basically sacrificing their summer. And that's what they see. They're like, I'm losing my summer. Well, I want to see them have, you know, 50 summers again, like gain all these,
Absolutely. Yeah.
maybe sacrificing one. Um, and the cool thing about Voyage is like you're really not sacrificing much, right? You get to live in a really cool house on the intercoastal and do a
Mm-hmm.
lot of really cool activities while you're here, and then grow and get kind of connected to other men and get connected to a community of alumni. And then I was talking to a family the other day about this. So we're just primary treatment. We've never considered doing like a transitional long-term
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And I think there's a lot of reasons why we don't do that. I think we want to keep the main thing, and just
Yeah.
be good at what we do. I think in this industry, it's too easy to be like, oh, we'll do all things for all guys, and we'll do primary plus extended plus detox plus this. And I think we want to just be good at one thing. And
Yeah.
so right now, as an organization, we're really kind of dialed in on being the best primary treatment option out there. And so when we tell a family 90 days, we really don't mean 90 days and then we're going to extend you 90 days or extend you another month. We kind of really stick to this idea of 90 days, maybe a week or two in either direction. But
Mm-hmm.
and that's only about planning your aftercare. Maybe there's not a bed in the facility we want to see you go next,
Mm-hmm.
and then identifying what's best for you next, right? Because if we did a year aftercare that was connected to Voyage, it's business. We would want all of our guys to go to our year aftercare,
Of
and
course.
so
Yep.
we want to kind of discharge folks to what the best options for there. So we've made great partnerships with a number of longer term transitional type programs, sober livings, but like sober livings on steroids, not just we really want to have a good quality treatment outcome. And I think that comes with following treatment recommendations. A lot of
Yeah.
folks in the industry will be like, well, what's your success rate? Our success rate's fantastic if you follow a treatment plan.
I'm with you.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like we get if you went to like a cancer specialist and they were like, hey, Justin, you've got cancer. We want you to do chemotherapy followed by radiation, followed by this. And you were like, I'll do one session of chemo, right? Your outcome would be terrible, right?
Right.
Same thing in treatment, right? And
Yeah.
so we want to prescribe what we consider to be the best treatment plan for you. And so that means everybody has a different treatment plan. Some guys will go to a year worth of sober living after us. Some guys will move back home with their loved ones. It
Mm-hmm.
just really depends on their presentation, their biopsychosocial kind of surroundings, and what
Mm-hmm.
makes the most sense for them. And so we want to kind of treat aftercare as something that's prescriptive, intelligent, well thought out, and not just like on the back burner of like, oh, and then you're going to go here because all the guys go here. And that's what
Right.
would happen if we had an extended care. All the guys would
Yeah.
go, right? Because it's in our best interest to send them there. So we've partnered with great places, Synergy and up in the Northeast, Providence
Mm-hmm.
Farm down in Chicago, Bodhi Casa down in California, right? All these really, and many, many more, all these great places all over the country. We've partnered with them, and there'd be different reasons why we would send guys to different places. And so we want to kind of evaluate a guy, see what's his best interest is, and then if that's what the recommendation is for him to continue in like a transitional level of care, or these kind of sophisticated sober livings that we've partnered with, then we want to make a good recommendation that's best for him and his family.
That's great. That's good stuff. And I'm with you. I mean, and not to um so to piggyback off that a little bit, I think New Waters treats that very similarly. I mean, like if someone comes to us for detox, we're going to look through a very similar lens, right? Like, and the information that we can gather about this person, what's been going on, what's the struggle, what's the life story that's led to this point, and based on that, what's going to be the next step, the next best step to give you the best chance at long-term recovery. And then we also do this inpatient diagnostic assessment program, which just gives us so much more data about those same exact things, like what's happened throughout your life that's contributed to your current presentation, your current problems. Where are you right now? And based on all this really cool data that we get to have about you, that the person gets to have about themselves, let's make a really tailored continuing care plan that's going to give you the best possible chance moving forward. And I think, I like to think that our industry sees through a similar lens, maybe not everybody, right? But I think most people do, is that exactly that. Not everybody can just be put into these boxes. Like you struggle with substance A and you have these, family dynamic issues. Therefore, you go to treatment center B. Like it can't work like that, right? Everybody's a unique individual, and we have to take all of those things into account and trying to help them make the best decisions for what's going to be best, right? Um, so it's really refreshing to hear
Less
you guys say
pressure.
that.
There's a lot less pressure on the treating organization if you have, a lot of freedom as, a clinical team to make that
Mhm.
best recommendation that you said, right?
Yes,
I've watched New Waters and like I said, I've known Justin 10 years. I've watched you over your career always kind of be consistent in making that best recommendation for somebody,
yeah,
right? Not just what's in best interest of our business, what's in the
right,
interest of you, right? Because keeping everybody here for a year would be the best interest in our business.
sure.
But if I'm concerned with guys getting well,
Mm,
I love young adult men. I think this is the big separator from Voyage than any other place I've been around is uh, first the commitment to building a significant therapeutic alliance with a patient, right? I don't care what clinical modality you're giving a guy, whether it's EMDR, MI, CBT, DBT, all those things are,
right.
but if you can't build rapport with that
Mm,
patient, then there's going to be a lack of trust. And so I think our biggest superpower is that we build significant, meaningful relationships with guys. And the men and women who work here love the men who come here. And so if you don't love working with this population, we are not the place for you to work as a professional, right? You have to love the challenges that young adult men present, which are many. You have to
hmm.
love coming to work every day and dealing with those challenges to work at a place like this. And that's modeled from the top down. If you don't love this population, if you're not obsessed with trying to help young adult men get sober, man, I think go work somewhere else because going to work at a place every day that you love what you do and you care so much about helping the guy that's there, there's a real like there's freedom in that. Like I love coming to
Yeah,
work today because I get to see a bunch of young guys that remind me of a young guy, who just needed some help, and I got help, and my life has been totally different as a result. And so I just care so passionately about watching one of these guys get help. And so I think that's the difference maker. I think that's the secret sauce. It's not the
I love
experiential
that.
stuff. It's not the great clinical work. And we do all that. It's the fact that
Hmm.
our patients believe us. And that starts like
Yeah,
lie to guys. We just tell them the truth, no matter how much it hurts. We want to build rapport with them, right? Like the 90-day thing. I get calls all the time. Well, don't tell them it's 90 days. The first thing I'm telling them is 90 days because I don't want to lie.
absolutely.
And if I
Yeah,
start a relationship off with you as a liar, you're never going to believe me.
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. Well, I mean, back to, what you said about just the rapport and the relationship. I mean, not to be a reductionist, but I think that's one of the main key components to successful recovery is relationships, right? Understanding how to have healthy relationships, connect with other people. I mean, I'm stealing this from somebody else, but at this point, we all know the phrase, connection is the opposite of addiction, but it couldn't be more true. And I think, experiencing that, in a treatment environment is crucial to our success. And then I think also learning how to experience that in our everyday life, in our home environment is, that much more important, right? Well,
Addiction's
Brad,
a lonely
go ahead.
deal.
Sorry.
Yeah, addiction's
Yeah,
a lonely deal. So I think the better your connections are with people, the more access you have to that power that comes as, building relationships. I think the better your outcomes look.
completely agree. Completely agree. Well, Brad, this has been a lot of fun, man. I really appreciate you coming on and hanging out with me and chatting and, sharing some information with our listeners. Um, really appreciate that. We'll make sure all of the, contact information, how to contact you, how to contact Voyage is mentioned in the show notes and all that good stuff. And, again, Brad, I really appreciate you coming on and hanging out, man.
Justin, I think so highly of you, man. It's been a wonderful pleasure watching your career from somebody who's, coming as an intern to, being a therapist to running a program to coming out there and now being a CEO. Man, it's a great honor to be a part of your journey.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. Well, hey, man, we'll have to get you up here and hang out, or we'll have to come down there in Florida and see you sometime soon.
It's going to come pretty quickly. I'll be there in July.
I love it. Looking forward to it.
Can't wait to
All
see
right,
you.
buddy.